Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a story that really just broke, sending some serious shockwaves through the federal justice system.
That's right.
We're talking about the abrupt firing of Maurene Comey. She's a federal prosecutor who's been, deeply involved in some absolutely huge cases lately.
Yeah, the biggest ones, really. Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, even the Sean Diddy Combs case.
Exactly. So the immediate questions, the ones everyone's asking, are why now? What's the real reason behind this, especially given her work?
Well, Maurene Comey has had really quite a remarkable decade-long career. She was an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, the SDNY.
Right, a famously independent office.
Very much so. And she held high-ranking positions there, like head of the Public Integrity Unit. She handled major cases, like the Senator Robert Menendez prosecution. Her name was definitely out there because of these investigations.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is, as always, to unpack the sources. We want to explore the different narratives, the complex legal stuff, and what this all means really for the justice system, so you can be truly well informed.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. So Maurene Comey was dismissed on Wednesday, July 16th, 2025.
Just happened.
Yeah. And the immediate reason, well, it wasn't made public right away, but reports say her termination letter cited Article 2 of the Constitution.
Which, basically outlines the president's power to hire and fire federal officials. It's broad authority.
But what's really striking is how quickly the interpretations and, frankly, accusations started flying.
Oh, immediately. One source, described as familiar with the situation, basically said that having a Comey is untenable in this administration.
Oof.
Yeah. The reasoning given was that her father, James Comey, is, quote, constantly going after the administration. So that points to a political angle right away.
And some are framing it, possibly as a distraction,
Yeah.
or maybe creating a scapegoat with everything swirling around the Epstein situation.
That's definitely part of the chatter, yeah. The timing feeds into that speculation.
And speaking of cases, the Sean Diddy Combs prosecution was her most recent big one.
It was.
And some sources, we should note, are claiming the case, quote, didn't go very well. Some even called it a disaster.
What are they pointing to?
They mentioned key accusations being dropped or ending in acquittals, creating this perception, I guess, that it wasn't a clean win. Someone apparently noted Diddy was, quote, grinning at the end.
Okay, but let's counterbalance that, because you have to look at her record. This is the prosecutor who secured convictions against Jeffrey Epstein, against Ghislaine Maxwell, against Robert Menendez.
Major convictions.
Huge.
Yeah.
So the argument from others is, one case not resulting in a conviction on every single charge doesn't suddenly make her a terrible attorney. It certainly doesn't seem like grounds for an immediate firing, especially given that history.
And just for context, prosecutors aren't usually fired over a single case outcome,
Right.
even if they don't get a full conviction on everything.
Not typically, no. That would be highly unusual. It's generally understood that, you win some, you lose some counts. It doesn't automatically mean failure.
So it's likely not just about the Diddy case performance. What else is going on? And this is where, well, the politics seem unavoidable.
Absolutely.
It gets really interesting here. Because you can't talk about Maurene Comey without mentioning her father, James Comey, former FBI director.
A very prominent critic of President Trump and someone the president has frequently targeted. And James Comey himself has faced scrutiny over his past actions during investigations.
Right. So that family connection, how is that being viewed in this context?
Well, as that one source put it, pretty bluntly, anyone with the last name of Comey becomes a target of this administration. So many see that connection as maybe not the only factor, but a significant one. And again, the timing feeds that narrative. Is this dismissal a distraction or a scapegoat move related to the ongoing Epstein firestorm?
Especially since President Trump has reportedly faced some criticism from his own base about how Epstein-related stuff has been handled.
That's part of the backdrop, yes.
And the president himself has sounded pretty frustrated with the focus on Epstein. Reports say he's called the whole thing a hoax and used stronger language like bulls.
He has, yeah, and accused his own past supporters of being essentially conned by it.
There was that Truth Social post, too, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. To quote it directly, President Trump wrote, "The radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again. Just like with the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier, he called them scams and hoaxes, saying that's all the Democrats are good at."
And he went further, right, about support.
He did. He declared, "I don't want their support anymore," directed at anyone still focusing on what he termed the Jeffrey Epstein hoax.
So a really charged political atmosphere. And that includes Congress, too, right? Calls for transparency on Epstein files?
Yeah, there have been calls for releasing Epstein documents, but reports also indicate that House Republicans have actually blocked votes to release those files. So there's tension there as well.
Okay, so beyond the politics and the performance debate, Maurene Comey's work, particularly in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, brings up some incredibly complex legal issues, stuff that goes right to the Supreme Court.
It really does. And it all stems from that controversial 2007 non-prosecution agreement, the NPA, that Jeffrey Epstein got from the U.S. Attorney's Office down in the Southern District of Florida.
The infamous NPA.
That's the one. And a crucial part of it said, and I'm quoting here, the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein.
The United States. That phrase is key, isn't it?
It's absolutely central. Because what's fascinating from a legal standpoint is this huge disagreement between different federal courts across the country. It's what lawyers call a circuit split.
Meaning different regions interpret the same thing differently.
Exactly. How broadly do you interpret an agreement made on behalf of the United States? Does it mean just the one office that signed it or the entire federal government?
Okay, so what are the different views?
Well, you have some courts, like the Second Circuit, which handled Maxwell's appeal, and the Seventh Circuit. They take a narrow view. They basically presume the agreement only binds the specific U.S. Attorney's Office that made it, unless it explicitly says otherwise, like affirmatively appears is the legal phrase.
So under that view, the Florida agreement wouldn't automatically protect Maxwell from prosecution in New York.
Correct. That was the reasoning applied in her case initially. But then you have other circuits, the 3rd, 4th, 8th, and 9th. They took a broader view, often using contract law principles.
And what do they say?
They say a promise made by the United States binds the whole federal government coast to coast unless the agreement itself specifically limits it. They see U.S. attorneys as acting for the entire government when they make these deals.
So the same agreement could mean totally different things depending on where a case is brought.
Precisely. It creates this kind of legal patchwork across the country. And it has huge implications, obviously, for how these agreements are made and challenged.
So what is Maxwell arguing now at the Supreme Court level?
Her lawyers are basically saying, look at the plain language, the United States. That means the whole country. They're arguing for that contract law interpretation. If there's ambiguity, it should be held against the government who drafted it.
Makes sense from a contractual standpoint.
They also point to the history of negotiating that NPA. They claim earlier drafts had limitations specifying only the Florida district, but those were removed, implying the final deal was meant to be broader. And they even cite the U.S. Attorney's Manual, which apparently suggests that prosecutors should explicitly limit an agreement if they don't want it to bind other districts. The implication being, if they don't limit it, it can bind nationally.
And what about the DOJ's own internal review of that original NPA?
Right. The Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, they did investigate it back in the day, and they found, interestingly, no policy prohibiting a U.S. attorney from declining to prosecute third parties or providing transactional immunity.
Even though some people thought it was basically forbidden immunity.
Exactly. Even though some witnesses interviewed believed it effectively granted what's called transactional immunity, which is generally disfavored, OPR concluded there wasn't a hard rule against it in that specific form back then. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole debate.
Wow. Okay, so pulling back from the legal weeds, what does this dismissal tangled up with all these issues mean for the bigger picture? For the justice system itself?
Well, it raises some really serious questions. Many people within the legal community are looking at Maurene Comey's firing and seeing it as a clear politicization of the justice system.
Politicization, that's a strong word.
It is. And they see it as a significant departure from traditional Justice Department practices. There are real concerns being voiced about the potential erosion of independence, especially for an office like the SDNY, which, as we said, prides itself on its independence.
And what's the potential downstream effect of that?
The worry is a possible chilling effect. Could other prosecutors working on politically sensitive cases feel, intimidated or hesitant? If that happens, it could really undermine public confidence in the fairness and impartiality of the whole federal justice system.
So as you've heard, the firing of just one prosecutor, Maurene Comey, It really ripples outwards.
Yeah.
It touches on these huge cases, deep political tensions, and fundamental debates about how our legal system functions.
Yeah, it's this tangled web. You have the immediate shock, the arguments over her performance, the shadow of her family name and political rivalries, and then these incredibly complex legal fights over what it means when the United States makes a promise.
It really highlights that ongoing friction, doesn't it, between political influence and the ideal of prosecutorial independence.
Absolutely.
So it leaves us, and you, with a crucial question to think about. How might these different interpretations of federal agreements, this circuit split we talked about, how might that impact future big cases? And maybe more fundamentally, what does this constant push and pull between politics and the justice system mean for the future of justice in America?